What is going on, everybody? Today we are going to be reviewing the New Balance BALOS, which is New Balance's super trainer or kind of super daily trainer, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, it's New Balance's $200 non-plated premium daily trainer. So without too much talking, let's get right into it. As always, we're going to start out with the outsole of the New Balance BALOS. As you can see, we have an orange pod, maroon pod at the toe, black pod at the lateral heel side, and more of that orange foam rubber outsole on the medial heel side. So as you can see, looks like a New Balance outsole, performs like a New Balance outsole. And I would say that in dry weather conditions, these held up totally fine. In wet weather conditions, I did run a little bit when it was rainy, and in my head, I was thinking I was going to slip a little bit, and I got a little bit worried in my head, but the traction actually held up really well in the rain. So take that with a grain of salt. I live in California. It doesn't rain too often. And when I was running in the rain, I was probably running around an 8 to 9 minute per mile pace with a couple turns here and there. But then again, I think that the traction may not perform the best in the rain as well as maybe in snowy or icy conditions. So keep that in mind. I do want to note that on this outsole, the maroon rubber and the black rubber are made out of a more firm and a different compound rubber than the rest of the outsole. So the white part of the outsole, as you can see on this outsole, is more of that Fresh Foam X foam, and the orange pods are kind of like a different foam. I believe it's probably like an EVA foam, but it's a little bit on the softer side. So that's something to keep in mind. As for durability, I have about 25 miles on the New Balance BALOS, and honestly, it's holding up pretty well. Typically with these foam outsoles, especially with a majority of the BALOS's outsole being an EVA foam or a softer foam, I thought that I would see a little bit more wear than what I'm seeing right now. So that's always a good sign. Hopefully, for $200 too, this outsole does last a while. But so far, 25 miles in, I don't see anything concerning about the durability of the outsole. So overall, outsole gets a pass for me. It's nothing crazy. I don't think it's like Adidas Continental Rubber or Puma Grip, but it's going to get the job done. And as long as you mostly run in dry weather conditions on the road, you're going to be totally good to go. Now, moving on to the midsole, which I had a lot to talk about in my first run review. Has my opinion changed on the shoe? A little bit, I would say. So I wouldn't say that I was completely wrong from my first run review. I do think that this midsole is better suited in a price point of around $165, kind of like the New Balance 1080 V14. I think that this setup is going to work perfectly for that price point, as well as I think the bounciness, the impact protection, the stack height, I think all of that just aligns better with a $165 price point. Now, I know I'm talking about the price a little bit early in the review, but I just want to put that out there if you guys have watched my first run review. Going quickly over the specs of the BALOS midsole, we have 38.5 millimeters of stack height in the heel, dropping to 32.5 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. It's a Fresh Foam X PIBA blend. New Balance always uses Fresh Foam X or Fuel Cell as their midsole compounds, but if you're like me and you've ran in a lot of different New Balance models, you can kind of tell that each one is a little bit different. So it's kind of hard to tell what you're getting with Fresh Foam X or Fuel Cell. Now, how did the midsole perform? I thought that the midsole performed very well. I think the best pace for me personally, or the pace I felt most comfortable in the BALOS, was my marathon pace, maybe plus or minus 1 minute of my marathon pace. So for me, my marathon pace is around 8:45 to 9 minutes. That's what I'm kind of aiming for the LA Marathon coming soon in March. And I would say that from an 8 minute per mile to 10 minute per mile pace, the New Balance BALOS was extremely comfortable. Going slower than that or going faster than that is when I really started to feel the ground under my forefoot. But overall, the midsole was pretty good. I'm not going to lie. So it was better than I was expecting after my first run review, or after the first 3 miles I ran in the shoe. Once I started to break in the foam, as well as I did my half marathon long run in the shoe, I really started to see the appeal of the BALOS. Now, what I mean by that is when I was running that 13.1 miles and I was running kind of like at different paces, I kind of like to start out 1 to 2 miles at a slower pace and then start to pick up to my marathon pace. And then at the end, I start like the mile 12, mile 13, I like to push the pace a little bit faster than my marathon pace. And I thought that the BALOS fit this run extremely well. And what I mean by that is I thought that there was plenty of impact protection. The stability of the shoe was great. And I do actually kind of like that ground feel underneath the forefoot. It didn't feel like the Brooks Glycerin Max or the Super Blast 2 where I felt a little bit higher off the ground, but it did give me that response in the sense of feeling the ground a little bit, as well as a touch of bounce while I was running in the shoe. And I think that the shoe held up beautifully over the half marathon. I think I could push this to maybe 15, 16 miles, maybe even 18 miles. So I think for marathon training, if you're looking at this shoe, it could be a good option as long as the $200 price point doesn't scare you. Now, how did the midsole feel? The midsole felt very soft when I was walking around or even at slower paces. I do want to note that the heel and the midfoot part of the midsole are extremely comfortable. Did not feel the ground whatsoever. Even after the long run, I was still feeling really plush and really comfortable on the midfoot to the heel. Now on the forefoot, it is a little bit thinner. I can definitely feel the orange rubber pods on the outsole when I am running faster or when I'm running really slow in the shoe. I compress the forefoot quite a bit as I am 200 pounds, which is I think heavier than most runners. But overall, I would say that the experience was very fun. It was a little bit bouncy and it still absorbed a lot of impact. And I did feel very comfortable at that marathon pace, plus or minus 1 minute per mile. So take that with a grain of salt. I think that the midsole is very comfortable, but again, I'm going to touch on price at the very end of the review. So if you're interested in seeing if I think that it's worth $200, make sure you stay till the end. So midsole overall was very comfortable, but we'll talk about that price and the value at the end of the review. Now, moving on to the upper, as if you guys watched my first run review, I didn't really have any complaints about the upper. I do have a couple things to note that I maybe didn't touch on in the first run review. One is that the upper has a little bit of a hot spot for my foot. Now, I do wear a size 12 and I have a wider than average foot, and I did feel that these ran true to size, maybe a little bit on the snug side, but personally, I like that type of fit. So whatever you get in your Nike running shoes or in your maybe newer New Balance shoes, like if you have the More V5 or the 1080 V14, that's going to be exactly the size you should get in the BALOS if you like that more snug fit or if you have a narrow foot. I do want to note that there is a seam on the forefoot, kind of where the laces start, and it was a little bit plasticky when I was breaking in the upper. I didn't feel it actually until the second or third run in the shoe, but that kind of went away as I broke in the shoe and broke in the materials. The upper is kind of like a plasticky mesh, which I think in the initial review, I said I really loved it, but I think I'm kind of more ambivalent about it now. It's not a super, super premium feeling mesh, but I think that this shoe fits my foot so well that I kind of forget about the materials that are on the shoes. So I think that the fit kind of makes up for the kind of plasticky material that I'm not the biggest fan of on the upper. Now, when it comes to the heel as well as the tongue, beautiful. The heel has the cutout kind of hole cutouts that suck in your heel. So with the runner's loop, you're not going to have any problems with heel lockdown. And then the knitted tongue on the upper with the little gusseted feel, man, this needs to be on every shoe because the tongue is super lightweight, super breathable, and also really thin, doesn't get in your way and doesn't move while you're running. So honestly, A+ for New Balance for doing this heel plus tongue combo. I think it should be in all of your guys' shoes. So overall, the upper is fantastic. Do want to touch on breathability for a sec. I think that since this upper is pretty thin, it seems like it would be a little bit more breathable, but I think that the plastic is pretty much like all over the shoe, or plasticky mesh is all over the shoe. And there are some perforations when I look through the shoe that I can see kind of light coming through, which means that there is holes and there should be some breathability. But when I was wearing them on my feet and I was running, I didn't really feel the air through my toes unless I was running really fast or I was running in super windy conditions. So that's something to keep in mind if you value ventilation heavily. Now, another thing that I do want to touch on is the weight of the shoe. Now, I don't have a food scale to kind of weigh the shoe to see how much it weighs, and I typically don't really care about the weight if I'm being completely honest because I'm such a heavy guy. I feel like I don't really notice the weight of shoes unless it's like a brick. But these shoes felt extremely light. They kind of remind me of the Super Blast 2. I don't exactly know if these are lighter than the Super Blast 2. I think maybe the Super Blast 2 is a touch lighter than this shoe, but nonetheless, both shoes are extremely light. I think that the BALOS is super comfortable in that aspect too, where it doesn't feel like you're wearing anything on your foot due to that lightweight feel, as well as due to the fit being so good in the shoe. So overall, what is my conclusion on the New Balance BALOS? I think it is a fantastic shoe. Now, I do kind of retract some negative things that I said about it in the first run review, but to be fair, that was my first time running in the BALOS, and as I broke in the shoe, I really started to love the shoe. But we do have to talk about that $200 price point. Now, with the $200 price point, in my eyes, and maybe in most consumers' eyes, you're thinking high stack height, premium foam, premium experience. Like if it's going to be a daily trainer that's going to be able to do everything, as well as it's going to give you a little bit extra something, right? But the Balos just feels more like a premium daily trainer, more in the lines of 160 to 165, maybe even 170, 170, 180. So I know that, you can say, oh, it's just 20 bucks, it's just 40 bucks, but it does make a difference in my opinion when you're talking about the price of the shoe, because I do feel that this shoe is extremely, extremely versatile. I think that it is a fantastic shoe once you break in the shoe. I would want to see for $200 a higher stack height of this foam, or maybe a little bit more PIBA in the blend to make it a little bit bouncier and a little bit more lively. Now, if you put this midsole, like I said, in the 1080 V14 and it was priced at 165, then I would be a very happy camper. But that's just not the case. This is priced at $200. And I feel like maybe we're spoiled with other brands, but the other brands like the Brooks Glycerin Max and the ASICS Super Blast 2, they have higher stack heights than 38.5 millimeters in the heel. They have, anywhere from 43 to 45 millimeters. So I just think that when you're paying that much money for a shoe, I feel like you should get above and beyond what's kind of on the market, because I feel like with this midsole setup, it is very comfortable, don't get me wrong, but I think like you can get cheaper shoes that kind of have more stack height and are just as comfortable, kind of like, maybe my shoe of the year, the Zoom Fly 6. But I think that that's just my opinion. 165, 160. I think that would be a phenomenal deal for this shoe. So if you do find these shoes on sale, maybe, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas season, or maybe once new models come out and this shoe starts to go on sale, definitely pick up the shoe for $160 and under. I think you're going to love the shoe, especially if you like the fit of New Balance shoes or the fit of Nike running shoes. I think that this feels amazing, and I think it is a pretty versatile shoe. Just keep in mind, if you're a bigger runner like me, you might feel the ground underneath your forefoot. So if you prefer that feeling, you don't really like super high stack height shoes and you like lightweight running shoes, and you want a premium daily trainer, I think that this is a fantastic option. But for the price of $200, I just honestly can't recommend the shoe. I think it's a little bit overpriced, and I think it's a little bit too expensive for what it has to offer. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a fantastic shoe. I really liked running in it, but I just don't think it's worth that premium price tag of $200. So that's just my opinion. If price is not an issue for you, I think that you're going to be very happy with these, and I would say just go ahead and cop it. You have $200 like that, it's nothing. Go for it. Have at it, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed either. But if you're a little bit more budget conscious, then I would say maybe look elsewhere from this shoe. Now, that's going to conclude my Balos review. Stay tuned. I'm actually going to compare these to the Brooks Glycerin Max as well as the ASICS Super Blast 2 to kind of make like a jumbo video of which $200 running shoe is worth it, or maybe which one suits you the best, because I actually do think that each one has an intended purpose and kind of an intended ICP, or ideal customer profile. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.